Hi there, my name is Jackie Ward, and welcome to another episode of the Early Years Learning Hub podcast series entitled Professional Learning Tapas, where I share what I hope are some golden gems of learning that inspire you to make some changes to practice that work for you and, most importantly, help the children that you work with to thrive. Today's topic is all about supporting your own well-being, avoiding burnout through maintaining a good work-life balance and getting organised to make things easier. I am very cognizant that stress, burnout and workload and changing landscapes and the burden of paperwork are huge issues for teachers and educators across all sectors and probably around the world. So I wanted to do this podcast as a way to help support teachers and educators and leaders to feel the joy again in what they do, and to share some of the things that I do in my teaching practice to manage that and support my own well-being and manage my workload. I will acknowledge that getting organised and being efficient and increasing my, efficacy and, doing things quicker is actually like a bit of a hobby of mine. So I recognise that everyone isn't going to be, it's not going to come so naturally for everyone. So I've tried to break down things into some manageable to-dos that you might implement over time. So I'm not suggesting that the things I talk about in this episode that you just, sit down and do all of it at once. I think that would be a bit overwhelming, but maybe there's a little, you could take it step by step. One of the main things I would love for everyone to walk away from this episode is, as I said, a renewed love for what you do, and doing things in a way that brings some more joy to your work and a strong focus on what is important. So you kind of shear off or shred a lot of those extra tasks and things, the things that you're finding difficult, finding another way to do them so they're easier and that you feel more engaged and more energized to give that energy to the children that you work with. And as I said, I know that it's going to be harder for some than others, and some parts of what you do, particularly the things that relate to legislative and quality requirements, are going to be, harder than other parts to do. But I encourage you to be brave and, quite frankly, brutal in slashing things out of your repertoire that are not working for you. If there is some things in there in your, list of things that you do that are really working for you, then keep doing them, like that. I'm not here to say, throw out the baby with the bathwater. If there's some good parts of what you do and you really like that thing, figure out ways that you can introduce the joy that you get from that or some of the components of that into some of the other things that you're finding a little bit more onerous or frustrating. So first of all, I wanted to acknowledge that the role of a teacher or educator is much more than simply teaching or interacting with children or parents or any of the other stereotypes we face in our broader community about teaching, especially in that early childhood space, is about playing with the children and, that teachers in the school space, you get so many holidays and, shorter hours. But we know that it is in reality complex, taxing work that comes with many additional responsibilities and accountabilities. So I want to put that out there, speaking as a teacher myself with lots of different experiences in different roles and different settings as well. And I think probably one of the biggest unseen things is the work that we do in relation to recording and documenting teaching, assessment, individualised planning, reporting, and contributing to the services or schools' continuous improvement processes, events planning, attending professional learning, and all the other things that we do. So this is sort of, knowing that all of those things exist in your repertoire of what you have to do every week, every month, every term, every year. This is what I suggest as some of my top, I think there's 5 altogether tips. So tip number 1, make a list of all the things that you do. So keeping all of these things in your head, I think, is contributing to that sort of endless to-do lists and contributes to that feeling of stress, anxiety and burnout. So a great first step in streamlining your approaches is to note all the things that you need to do, when you need to do them, and exactly what you need to be recording. Because sometimes we get into habits or systems or processes where we kind of end up doing a lot of work, particularly if we attend, some professional learning or get some advice that we need to introduce a new way of doing things. We don't necessarily cull out the other things. Step number 2 is analyze and critique the activities. So once you've got that list, consider whether some of these things can, number 1, be eliminated because it was part of an old system or process, or practice that's been developed over time to take on different approaches. So you're doing something different around assessment or around documenting children's learning or whatever else. So if you've got something in there that you go, you know what, I think we're actually covering off on that by doing X, Y, and Z. So that's one thing. Some of the things, number two, could be combined as they're on a related topic or happen roughly at the same time each week, month, or term. So maybe you've got, for example, at my service, we've got sort of very similar cleaning checklists that one of the educators is in charge of in our service. And we looked at it recently and said, well, what about we combine some of those? And it was a lot of sort of ticking of boxes, but it was, it was a task that she needed to maintain. So we combined it and we're like, that's going to, I hope, reduce the burden for her. Number three is enhanced or modified, or if they're causing you anxiety or frustration. So in other words, can you, perhaps use some digital technologies, AI, or is it better to go back to a paper version? I'm going to share one of my examples with that because we as teachers don't get a lot of time in front of a computer. So maybe that's an option. So what are things that you could modify and do differently if it's maybe just the process or the thing that you're doing, the way you're doing it is the problem? And number four is this is a really crackerjack one that I want everybody to really take on board. Is it a requirement or it's something that you think is required? So is it your interpretation, or you've heard some, whispers over the years, or you've, heard from a colleague here that this is what you need to do? Is it actually a requirement? So knowing what you're required to do, I think, is really important, which leads us to tip number three, or step number three. Clarify expectations. Is the way you're doing it right now compliant with learning quality and teaching standards? Is it in line with what your organisation, school or leaders expect? Is it overly complicated or would benefit from, as I said, using technology or going back to pen and paper? So what are the things, what do you think is the problem with whatever the pain point is? And have a think about maybe having a discussion upline with whoever in your organisation is okay to give the sign off on you stopping doing that if you're thinking it's a requirement. Have a conversation, talk about the fact that you've been doing some critical reflection, you've been doing some analysis and critiquing of what you do, and you'd like to streamline some approaches. So this kind of leads naturally, I think, into tip number four, or step number four. Take the power back. You have got a lot of professional autonomy as a teacher. You might not realise that because you might be thinking, as I said before, that these things are a requirement. These things are a legislative requirement or a quality requirement or the requirement of what your manager or leader expects of you. So take the power back, prioritise finding an easier way to do that thing. So you might still do that. So your organisation might say, yep, you've still got to do all of those things. Find an easier way that brings you some joy. If it's about, involving children in the process, or if it's about, as I said, using technology, or if it's about, working collaboratively with another educator or teacher, is that a way that suits you and your learning style? Whatever it might be, think outside of the box to find an easier way and something that you find is a really joyful activity. All too often, as I said, we introduce new things into our repertoire because someone else does that. You feel it looks impressive, you should be doing that, or you went to a PL and you're inspired, or someone told you to do it that way, which is fine. But then we do that thing often in addition to the other things. So really do this exercise of really looking at all the things that we do as part of our teaching practice and think about culling a lot of things. If you have a new idea or approach that eats into your own time, make a call to cull something, change an aspect of what you do, or let it go altogether. I can't tell you how many times in my practice I've thought, yeah, I love the sounds of that, but I'm right up front with myself. That would take a lot of time that I would need to put in, and I'm not prepared to invest the time on that thing that is over and above the requirement of what I need to do. It would cause me stress and anxiety, and I don't want to introduce that into my life. So take the power back and take the decision making back around some of the things that that are the extra things that you like to do in that way. But if it's causing you anxiety, you've got to be mindful of your time, which is tip number 5 or step number 5. Be mindful and respectful of your own time. There is a professional expectation that we may, especially if you're a qualified teacher, to be expected to do some tasks in your own time. But be honest with yourself about how much time you're willing to put in the extra bits, and set up some clear parameters for yourself to minimize the creep into your personal time. For me, that looks like completing some observations and assessment in paper when I'm with the children. That works for me and allows me to involve the children in documenting and assessing their own learning. Another example is stretching out the amount of time that my written plan lasts or it covers. I work in a preschool, so I do 2 plans per term. I was finding that I was putting all of these planned learning experiences into a plan that was going for a week, and then we stretched it out to 2 weeks. I still had a lot of content in there. So we opened it up to say, well, let's let this run for a longer period of time so that we can enact some slow pedagogy. We can take some time. We can have children really, engaging in some rich project and inquiry-based learning and all those sorts of things. And we introduced a section in our program where we could record some emergent curriculum, some spontaneous learning experience or teachable moments. And so that allows for that sort of, these are the things we've got planned, but these are the things that happen sort of as we go, I guess, in a spontaneous way. The other thing is knowing what's required. As I said, I know that this meets the requirements of the legislative and quality frameworks in early childhood because I know those requirements well. There's a requirement to have a written program. There's no requirements as to how long that program should be covered for, that you're planning for learning against the learning outcomes and for individuals and groups, critical reflection drives the program. So I'm confident that what I'm doing there is making sure that I'm not having to put in lots of extra time, and I can manage sort of, that in my 1 hour extra that I work and meet with my colleagues, we can cover off on all the things we need to do. Sometimes we talk about continuous improvement. Every, twice a term you're writing the program and evaluation and things like that. Another example is me coming in half an hour earlier 1 day per week to complete my transition to school statements. So I'm really clear about the fact that I'm not just saying, well, I'm going to just do extra work every day of the week, because obviously in my scenario, I've got 2 jobs. I run the Early Years Learning Hub and I also have my teaching job. So I don't really have time. And even when I was younger, I had my children early, had a bunch of them. I've got 4. So I never, I quite often used to pack work and take it home with me, but never got any time to do it when I was at home. So I realized early on that I had to really be very efficient with my time and make some decisions about what I could and couldn't do to meet the requirements of my work. So I hope that has been helpful and sets you up for a slow path for really critically reflecting on what you do and looking for ways to streamline and making things more efficient and effective for your own practice. And remember, it's going to look different for everyone. Whatever suits you, whatever floats your boat, whatever works and helps to bring the joy back for you. I did want to take this opportunity to say some of the things I've talked about, I've put together. I've actually written a blog on a similar kind of topic that has a lot of that stuff in writing and covers that sort of stuff in more detail. The blog is called Getting Organised to Support Efficient, Effective Practice. So I'll pop the link to that in the show notes. And we also have what I think would revolutionise my practice, because we use it at my service, is a service communication planning and reflection journal or diary. Educators can use it as an individual or you can use it as your whole service. And it's really a one-stop shop for collecting all the things in the one spot that you need to do. Team meetings, team information, educational leader tasks, nominated supervisor tasks, communication from day to day about, so-and-so's grandma's picking them up today. A little supplies reminder if you've got some supplies that are running low, evacuation fire drills, planning for celebrations and things like that. So I'll put the link to that in there as well. So it's called the Service Communication Reflection and Planning Journal. So I hope you found that interesting and useful. And don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And please leave us a comment if you like what we do or if you like to hear about something else that we haven't already covered. Thanks. Bye.